an episode of Mock Talks, where we will discuss the issue of sexual assault in Hamilton and the organization SACHA. Guiding the discussion today will be Megan, Rachel, Madeline, and Alicia. SACHA is located downtown Hamilton, Ontario. It is a nonprofit community-based organization of women guided by anti-racist and anti-oppressive values. In particular, SACHA operates as a feminist organization that believes women have a human right to live without violence. SACHA actively works for women's equality by challenging social and political structures and systems that contribute to the experience of violence and oppression. Presently, SACHA provides services to victims of sexual violence while working to end violence through education, advocacy, coalition building, and community partnerships. This is Erin Cricket, a staff member of SACHA for 4 years. She is the primary public education coordinator in the city of Hamilton. She has agreed to sit down with us in order to shed some light on the current issues in Hamilton, as well as the ways in which we can collectively unite to provide a solution to these issues.
So, is sexual assault a major issue within the Hamilton area?
Sexual assault is a major issue all over Canada. So when I'm out and about the community, folks really do care about this issue, but they tend to push it away, to not want to talk about it, which is understandable. It's tough stuff to talk about. But one question I sometimes get is, what are you doing for women outside of Canada? What are you doing for people who are survivors outside of Canada? That implies, I think it's sometimes a really kind question, and then sometimes a really oppressive or racist question, because it implies that sexual assault is only an issue for women of color in developing countries. But sexual assault is a Canadian issue. 1 in 3 women will experience sexual violence sometime in her lifetime in Canada, and 1 in 6 men will experience sexual violence. So we need to, as Hamilton, be really looking at this issue because it's happening in our community.
Okay, so are there certain areas of Hamilton that report higher cases of sexual assault based on what you've seen?
So there's no typical survivor. Sexual assault can happen to somebody regardless of what their zip code is, what their age is, what their class is or their educational level. So also I don't have those statistics in terms of who's reporting from the police. I don't have the police statistics. Also, the police statistics don't give us a real accurate snapshot of what is happening in Hamilton. And even the folks who choose to come to SACHA to access services, that doesn't even give us an accurate snapshot because, let's start with police, only 1% of survivors ever report the crime to the police. Yeah. And then with folks coming to SACHA, only 83%, the other way around. We know that 83% of survivors never tell a professional service. So, and then the third thing about how we don't know sexual assault per neighborhood is because the accurate snapshots we have about sexual assault in Canada are from research, from folks who are doing research. And unfortunately, this isn't an area research is done with accuracy and newness. So the closest research I have is from Statistics Canada. It's from 2007, which is a while ago. So we do know that there are risk factors. So although I said that anyone can be sexually assaulted anytime, any age, any gender, we know that women are at greatest risk. 87% of survivors are women, and we know that women 16 to 24 are at greatest risk. And also, especially women who choose to go to post-secondary, that first 2 weeks of post-secondary is the most dangerous time in a woman's life.
Oh, wow.
Yes, first 2 weeks of first year. So those are the things we know in terms of risk factors. We also know that women living with disabilities are 84% of women who live with disabilities will experience some sort of sexual violence in her life. We know things like that. Hamilton should be very proud. We had the second rape crisis center in Ontario, 3rd in Canada. Women in Hamilton got together and said, look, this is an issue. When the word rape wasn't even being printed in the Hamilton Spectator, women got together and said, look, we need to talk about this. Not only do we need to talk about this, we need to provide support to survivors of sexual violence. We also need to prevent violence. So we don't see rates of sexual violence dropping, even with the advent of sexual assault centers in our communities, even with better working relationships with police and justice systems, and criminalizing sexual assault in a more effective way. In 1983, we changed from a rape law that was hugely problematic to a sexual assault law, which is more holistic and encompassing.
Oh.
And yet, even with that, we don't see the rates decreasing. What really needs to happen to eradicate sexual violence in Canada is a shift in culture. a shift in how we view the act of sexual violence and how we view sexism and our culture of hypermasculinity. We really need to be questioning those things and be doing education and having conversations. So you may not think, when you hear a friend tell a sexist joke, or say something like, man, I got really raped on that test.
Right.
You may not think, to interrupt that you're like part of ending sexual violence, but you are. That is on a continuum of violence. Using jokes where we objectify women or make light of rape, that is on a continuum that makes it okay to objectify women, treat them less. That is on a continuum with rape at one side and jokes about sexual violence or jokes degrading women over on the other side. So we do need to be doing education. We need to talk about rape culture, what it actually is, and how to actively work against it. And that work sounds depressing, but it can be really joyful. It can be really fun. So the opposite side of that is talking about healthy sexuality and what consent actually looks like, and practicing awesome ways to ask people for consent and talk about how that actually makes healthy, hot sexual activity.
So in relation to the issues we just discussed previously, what are a few ways that SACHA has attempted to reach out to individuals facing these issues?
So when we were first founded in 1975, we're one of the first sexual assault centers in Ontario. So the big thing that the founding women at the center faced was letting folks know that this was real, that this was really an issue. The numbers were shocking, and the number of women coming forward and breaking the silence in that moment were really shocking. So the one way in the 80s that we outreach to folks is outreaching to survivors, mostly saying, this is what violence looks like, and naming the issue. So this is sexual violence and rape. So that was what kind of was happening in the 80s, and then in the 90s we moved more into no means no. So looking at rape prevention by letting folks know that the Canadian law is really clear that that word no doesn't have to be uttered, and there's so many other ways to say no. You can say it with your body, you can say, I'm really drunk, I think you should be going home now. There's so many other ways to say no. No means no was very effective. When I go into grade 9 classes, they know about it. 14-year-olds know about it. So folks who were born in the very late 90s know about no means no. Then in the 2000s, we're moving more to this consent is sexy, only yes means yes, that sort of thing. We're also moving away, because our public education in the 80s and 90s really looked at, again, we know that not all survivors are women, but 87% of survivors are women. We also know that not all perpetrators are men, but Jackson Katz is using the number that 99% of perpetrators are men. I think a more important thing to focus on is that most men are not perpetrators. Yeah, we know that perpetrators is actually a very small group of men who choose to use abuse against women.
How does SACHA educate the public about sexual violence?
Yeah, so I am the public educator at SACHA, and we're really, really lucky to not only have me in the office 4 days a week, but also we have a campaign at McMaster called It's Time. So we also have another public educator who works on a grant that we're co-presenting the campaign with YWCA in Hamilton. So it's time to end violence against women and girls. So we are both working. I work in the general community and Megan works at McMaster. We both work on violence prevention. So I talk to 2,500 people a year. Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. It's amazing. So I think workshops are powerful. It is powerful to see. I do a 75-minute presentation, like workshop with grade 9s in their health class about consent and healthy relationships. Great. And we go through some really powerful stuff there. But I will go anywhere in Hamilton. I am in workplaces, I'm in faith groups, I'm in cultural groups, I am in detention centers, I'm in schools, I'm really everywhere. But unfortunately, I'm just one person, so we're really looking at tactics that maximize our message. So really hesitant to use buzzwordy words like that, but there have been some really powerful moments when we've been, writing our blog or being on YouTube, having a Twitter feed, and using Facebook. There's been some really powerful moments, both providing education moments and reaching out to survivors. Also, we have events, so we have some really cool events in Hamilton. So Take Back the Night is a really powerful moment for survivors to get together. It's the third Thursday in September, and we have it at City Hall, and it's over 1,000 women and their kids get together. Yeah, and it's a really celebratory vibe in Hamilton. So we do Zumba, we do laughter yoga, then we hire some dancers or some singers, we have giant puppets, we hire a radical samba squad, and they march with us, providing beats for all the women. It's amazing. And then we take to the streets and we march around downtown Hamilton, and the idea being that to remind Hamilton that this is still an issue, that women are still being hurt in our community, and that we are not going to stand for it. I also do, Take Back the Night is incredibly fun, and it's incredibly cathartic to be on the street and to be making noise with other survivors. But I like to have lots of different events. We have panel discussions, movie nights, anything to create conversations. I put on rock shows of women that highlight music being made by women and gender non-conforming folks in Hamilton. It's a chance to get together, because going to a movie about an intense subject or seeing a panel discussion about, quite often folks will be like, not on my Thursday night, thank you. But we want to show folks, feminists can have fun. Women make really good music. So we have a pancake breakfast coming up at the end of November. You can check out our website for more information. And yeah, pancake breakfast and rock show. We want to have fun and continue the conversation about sexual violence.
Yeah, it's a great way to do it,
Yeah.
for sure. What is the best way for interested individuals to get involved and volunteer with SACHA?
Yeah, so folks who are women identified, there's lots of spaces to be involved in SACHA. You can sit on a committee, like our management committee or a fundraising committee. You can volunteer at events. That's Chocolate Fest, our beautiful fundraiser in February. Yes, it's our 10th anniversary this year, and I think the amount we're trying to raise is $50,000. Because we're really committed to ending violence, and we're really committed to supporting survivors, so we need the capacity to do that. So Chocolate Fest, folks of all genders are welcome to volunteer there. We really appreciate the support of men in the community come out to volunteer the night of. And then the most involved kind of intensive way is volunteering on the support line, and that's where the majority of SACHA volunteers are. We just last night had the end of training, so we had a group of new SACHA volunteers sort of graduate and finish training. It was amazing. It's very powerful. We invited current support line volunteers to meet them, and it's a large group of women. It's over 30 women. It's amazing.
To look further into the issues of sexual violence, our team conducted research on the history of feminism and feminist activism, activist theories like group consciousness and group identity, as well as life experiences and personality traits that contribute to feminist activism.
For decades, feminist activists have worked to support women who have experienced domestic violence or assault in order to create a society free of such violence. Feminist actions have been a prominent activist group since its emergence during the first feminist wave in the 1970s. As discussed by authors Taylor and Rupp, feminist activism has evolved in many forms throughout its long history. Prominently, the feminist movements have been focused on the culturally constructed differences between men and women and the quest to deconstruct restricting and discriminatory barriers, often incorporating life experiences and personal cultural experiences into doing so. The history of feminist activists has featured various movements, including cultural, radical, socialist, liberal, black, and queer feminism, whose particular goals and objectives varied slightly. Regardless of the particular strand of historical feminism, each subgroup functions through the committed participation in political activity. Such activist groups ensure the survival of a visionary core of the movement, develop a strategy or project for realizing the movement's vision, and allow activists to claim an identity that opposes the dominant order. In doing so, feminist activism works to deconstruct the barriers between not only men and women, but those individuals of all varying walks of life.
There are many reasons why people choose to join a movement or participate in some form of activism. When a group of people come together to support the same cause, the result is group consciousness. Group consciousness is defined as an identification with the group in which an individual recognizes the group's position in a power hierarchy, rejects rationalizations of relative positioning, and embraces a collective solution to the group's problems. There are many psychological mechanisms that play an important role in transforming life experiences into activist behavior. The explanation for participation in collective action accounts for the individual differences that contribute to group consciousness and activism, and explicitly links group consciousness to activist behaviors. Current collective action around women's rights can be classified as proactive movements, in that basic rights exist for women. Therefore, we might expect activism to take an indirect path from personality and life experiences through feminist consciousness to activism. Feminist consciousness is defined as a politicized gender identification. This involves identification with women coupled with a collective political ideology around women's issues. This definition is based on the notion of stratum consciousness, which involves 4 independent elements. The first being a sense that one's fate is linked to that of other members of a stratum group, for example, women, older adults, and African Americans. The second element is the discontent an individual may have with the power or influence of a group. The third is the belief that the power differentials are a result of structural rather than individual factors. And the fourth is the collective orientation toward redressing these inequities.
Another mechanism that contributes to collective action in women's rights movements is life experiences. Life experiences with oppression emphasizes that personal experiences with racial oppression often spurred the development of Black consciousness. In much the same way, experiences with sexual harassment should lead to the development of feminist consciousness. In addition, these experiences, when filtered through a feminist lens, should increase general women's rights activism as well. Members of subordinate groups and societies, based on race and gender, have been shown to be more aware of group memberships than our dominant group members, increasing the likelihood that they will identify with these groups, be exposed to a collective ideology, and develop group consciousness. Thus, lesbians may be more likely than straight women to be aware of gender oppression because their experiences include discrimination based on both sex and sexual orientation. Therefore, we might expect women identifying as lesbian to score higher than straight women on feminist consciousness and women's rights activism. Education as a life experience is another contributor to an individual's reason for participating in activism. Studies about the development of group consciousness have shown that education is related to higher levels of ethnic and gender consciousness in ethnic minorities and white women. As a result, education may indirectly increase participation in women's rights activism by increasing feminist consciousness. Education, specifically about women's subordinate position in society, example through a women's studies course or consciousness-raising group, has also been shown to increase levels of feminist consciousness and is thus expected to increase women's rights activism as well.
The literature that exists suggests that the personality and life experience characteristics of women's rights activists are similar to those of other active in the student movements from the 1960s and today. Research has showed that there are certain personality traits that contribute to why an individual would choose to advocate or become involved in feminist activism. One of the traits is authoritarianism. Described first in 1950, authoritarianism is a personality characteristic defined by rigid adherence to controversial mores, obedience to traditional authorities, and aggression towards perceived outgroups.
The issue of sexual assault and oppression against women remains a particular topic in today's society. The prominence of this issue is noted, as 51% of Canadian women have reported experienced sexual assault or physical assault since the age of 16. Furthermore, the issue holds particular weight in relation to the university students, as 4 out of 5 female undergraduate students surveyed in Canadian universities said they had been victims of domestic assault within a relationship. While the current rates of sexual assault are shocking, the cultural realm in which they're situated is even more shocking. It is estimated that only 1% of all date rapes are reported to police, and 44% of all sexual assault survivors do not report the crime, as they believe there are concerns about the attitudes of police or the court system. It is for these 2 distinct reasons that we are examining the current issues of sexual assault within the Hamilton neighborhood and focusing on the way in which these issues can be combated and improved for the future.
As you can see, sexual assault remains a prominent issue within both the McMaster and Hamilton communities. Together we can join forces and fight to make a change. If you want to get involved and help the cause, visit www.SACHA4.ca. And if you find yourself a victim of any form of mistreatment, contact the 24-hour hotline at 905-525-4162.